I stood there in the gym, sweat dripping down my face as I hammered the heavy bag. 6 years of marriage to Amanda, and I thought we had it all figured out. The trust, the love, the support through every fight of my career. Then I borrowed her phone to check on our takeout order and saw that text from Jay. My world shattered when I realized not only was my wife cheating, but her lover was Jackson Stone, the very man I was scheduled to fight next month in the biggest match of my career. If you're watching this and know what it's like to have your world turned upside down, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to see how I turned this betrayal into the fight of my life. My name is Cedric Thomas, and fighting has been my life since I was 16 years old. I grew up in a small town just outside of Chicago, where opportunities were limited and dreams often died young. But I found my salvation in an old run-down gym with peeling paint and second-hand equipment. The moment I wrapped my hands and hit the bag for the first time, I knew this was what I was born to do. The road to becoming a professional MMA fighter was far from smooth. In my early 20s, I suffered a knee injury that doctors said would end my career before it truly began. I spent 18 months in rehabilitation working odd jobs to pay the bills while training in whatever spare time I had. Those were dark days filled with doubt and pain, but they forged the discipline that would later define my career. By age 27, I had fought my way into the professional circuit. I was not a champion yet, but I was ranked in my weight class and respected for my ground game and resilience. My daily routine was structured down to the minute. Wake at 5 a.m. Run. 5 miles breakfast strength training technique drills. Sparring, recovery, repeat. Every decision from what I ate to when I slept was made with one goal in mind: to be the best fighter I could be. Amanda came into my life during those struggling early years. We met at college, where I was taking night classes in business management, trying to prepare for life after fighting. She was a full-time business student, brilliant and ambitious with a smile that could light up a room. What started as study sessions soon turned into something deeper. She believed in me when I had doubts, celebrated my victories when they came, and held me when the losses hit hard. We married 6 years ago in a small ceremony with close friends and family. As my career gained momentum, Amanda took over managing my finances and helping with public relations. She had a way with people and a head for numbers that I lacked. We were a team in the truest sense, sharing dreams of championship gold and starting a family once I had secured our future. Looking back, I should have noticed the subtle changes. Amanda started dressing differently, spending more time on her appearance. Her business trips became more frequent, always coinciding with fight events in different cities. She was on her phone constantly, quickly putting it away whenever I entered the room. But I was too focused on my training, too trusting to see what was happening right in front of me. The upcoming fight against Jackson Stone was potentially career-defining. He represented Apex Gym, our biggest rival in the region, and had been rising through the ranks with a series of impressive knockouts. At 32, I knew my window for a title shot was narrowing. A win over Jackson would put me in contention. A loss would send me to the back of the line. My coach, Troy Warren, had built our entire training camp around countering Jackson's aggressive striking style. Troy was more than just a coach. He was a mentor who had guided me since those early days in the rundown gym. Lately, he had been expressing concerns about my focus, noticing small mistakes in training that were uncharacteristic for me. "Your body is here, but your mind is somewhere else," he told me one day after a particularly poor sparring session. "Whatever is going on, you need to fix it or postpone this fight. Jackson will capitalize on every lapse in concentration." I assured Troy everything was fine, blaming fatigue from the intense weight cutting. The truth was, I had been feeling the pressure mounting. At my age, with the competition getting younger and hungrier, each fight carried more significance. I could not afford any distractions. Little did I know that the greatest distraction was already unfolding in my own home, and it would soon collide with my professional life in a way I could never have imagined. It was a Tuesday evening, just under 4 weeks before the fight. I had finished an exhausting training session focused on defensive wrestling and came home wanting nothing more than a hot shower and a decent meal. Amanda had texted earlier saying she would order from our favorite Thai place since neither of us had the energy to cook. "Babe, what time did you order the food?" I called out as I walked through the door. "I am starving." Amanda was in the shower. "About 20 minutes ago," she shouted back. My phone is on the coffee table if you want to check when it will arrive. I grabbed her phone, intending only to look at the delivery app notification. As I picked it up, a text message flashed across the screen from someone saved simply as Jay. Still thinking about last night. Cannot wait to see you again before the fight. He has no idea what is coming. My finger hovered over the notification. I had never been the type to invade Amanda's privacy, had never felt the need to check her messages or question her whereabouts. Trust was the foundation of our relationship, or so I thought. But something about that message sent a chill through me. The reference to the fight, and he in the same context, was too specific to ignore. I opened the message thread and started reading. What I found destroyed me from the inside out. The messages between Amanda and Jay went back 4 months, starting with professional-sounding exchanges about promotional opportunities, then quickly evolving into flirtation, explicit photos, and detailed accounts of their encounters. They had been meeting in hotel rooms during her business trips, sometimes in the same cities where I was fighting. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, feeling like I had been hit with a bat to the stomach. The shower stopped running, and I heard Amanda moving around in the bathroom. I kept scrolling, unable to stop myself from absorbing every painful detail. Then I saw it. A message from 3 weeks ago. Jay, it is officially set. I will be fighting your husband next month. The irony is too perfect. Amanda. He has no idea. Be careful, though he is better than people give him credit for. Jay. Do not worry. I know all his weaknesses now. In and out of the ring. The bathroom door opened, and Amanda walked out in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel. She stopped short when she saw me sitting there with her phone in my hand, my face a mask of devastation. Cedric, what are you doing with my phone? Her voice was steady, but I could see the panic rising in her eyes. Who is Jay? I asked, my voice surprisingly calm despite the hurricane raging inside me. Just a promoter I have been working with for your next few fights. Why are you going through my messages? Do not lie to me, Amanda. I know exactly who Jay is. I know exactly what you have been doing. Her face crumpled, not in genuine remorse, but in the way of someone caught in a lie they cannot escape. It is not what you think. She started using the oldest, most pathetic line in the book. It is exactly what I think. I cut her off. You have been sleeping with Jackson Stone, the man I am fighting next month, for at least 4 months. You have been giving him information about me, about my training, about my weaknesses. Tell me what part of that I am misunderstanding. The trickle of truth began then. First, she admitted to the affair but claimed it was purely physical, a mistake that meant nothing. When I confronted her with specific messages that contradicted this, she adjusted her story. Then she blamed my training schedule, the pressure of being a fighter's wife, the loneliness during my training camps. You are never really here, Cedric, she said, tears streaming down her face. Even when you are physically present, your mind is always on fighting, always on the next match, the next training session. I needed someone who could give me their full attention. And you chose my direct competitor? I asked, incredulous. Out of all the men in the world, you chose the one person who could use this against me professionally. It just happened. She sobbed. Jackson was charming. He listened to me. He made me feel valued. While plotting to use information about me to win our fight, I added. Information you gave him. She denied this at first, then admitted she had talked about my training habits, old injuries, and psychological approach to fights, but nothing specific about your game plan for this match. She insisted, as if that made any difference. I stood up, unable to be in the same room with her any longer. I need to get out of here. Where are you going? She asked, panic now evident. Cedric, we need to talk about this. We can work through this. There is nothing to work through, I replied, grabbing my still-packed gym bag. You betrayed me in every possible way. Not just as my wife, but as my partner, my business manager, my support system. You weaponized our marriage against my career. I walked out that night and drove straight back to the gym. Troy had already left, but I had keys. I made up a bed of sorts using gym mats and spare towels, knowing I could not go home, not yet. Sleep did not come easily, and when it did, it was filled with nightmares of betrayal and public humiliation. Morning found me exhausted but determined to understand the full extent of what I was facing. I spent hours going through social media fight forums and news sites looking for any connection between Amanda and Jackson. I found plenty. There were photos of them at industry events, standing too close for professional acquaintances. Comments on fight analysis videos, where Jackson seemed to know details about my preparation that were not public knowledge. Most devastating were the timestamps showing Amanda had been with Jackson the night before my last fight when I thought she was at a business dinner with sponsors. The affair had not been as discreet as they thought. People had noticed, speculated, but no one had told me. Perhaps they assumed I knew and did not care, or that we had some arrangement. The thought made me physically ill. The most damaging revelation came when I found private messages Jackson had sent to training partners, bragging about how he was sleeping with my wife and how it would give him a psychological edge in our upcoming fight. "Imagine stepping into the cage knowing I have been with his wife," he wrote. "He will be too emotional to fight smart." They had turned my life into a joke, a strategy, a footnote in his path to victory. The betrayal went beyond the personal into the professional, threatening everything I had worked for. The next few days were the darkest of my life. I avoided returning home, staying instead at a cheap motel near the gym. I went through the motions of training, but my performance suffered dramatically. I was dropping my guard, missing counters, gassing out early in sparring sessions. Troy noticed immediately. "This is not working, Cedric," he said after watching me take a beating from a training partner I usually dominated. "Either tell me what is going on or I am pulling you from this fight. I will not send you into that cage to get hurt." We sat in his small office, the walls covered with photos of fighters he had coached over decades in the sport. I broke down and told him everything: the affair, Jackson's involvement, the leaked information, all of it. I expected judgment or pity, but Troy surprised me with understanding. "I have been in this game for 30 years, he said quietly. "Seen every kind of sabotage and psychological warfare you can imagine. But this is a new low." Then he told me something he had never shared before. 20 years ago, when he was still competing, his fiancée had left him for his main rival right before a championship bout. He lost that fight badly, spiraling into depression and alcohol abuse that nearly ended his career. "The mistake I made was trying to bury the pain instead of using it," he said. "You have two choices now, son. Let this destroy you, or let it transform you." That night, Troy introduced me to Dr. Marcus, a sports psychologist who specialized in working with fighters. Together, they developed a new approach to my training camp. Instead of trying to compartmentalize my personal turmoil, we integrated it into my preparation. Dr. Marcus taught me visualization techniques, specifically targeting Jackson. I would picture his face, acknowledge the rage and hurt I felt then, channel those emotions into precise technical execution rather than wild aggression. "Emotion is fuel," he would say, "but you control the engine." Troy restructured my training to focus more intensively on Jackson's specific weaknesses. We reviewed footage of his previous fights, identifying patterns in his ground game and cardiovascular conditioning that could be exploited. Every drill, every sparring session, every road work morning became an opportunity to prepare not just physically but psychologically for the confrontation to come. While my days were filled with training, my evenings were spent putting my personal life in order. I met with Lauren Diaz, a divorce attorney recommended by a teammate who had gone through a similar situation. She helped me secure my financial accounts and personal documents, advising me on how to protect myself legally in the separation to come. With the landlord's permission, I changed the locks on our apartment and arranged to collect my essential belongings when Amanda would be out. I told only my closest friends and family about the situation, asking for their discretion until after the fight. The last thing I needed was this becoming public knowledge and creating an additional circus around the match. Amanda's attempts to contact me grew increasingly desperate. She called constantly, left tearful voicemails, and sent lengthy text messages, alternating between apologies, justifications, and accusations. I responded only through Lauren, making it clear that any discussion about our relationship would happen after the fight, and only with lawyers present. Meanwhile, Jackson had begun his own form of psychological warfare. His social media accounts filled with thinly veiled references to taking everything from me and knowing my deepest secrets. In interviews, he spoke with unusual confidence about exploiting my emotional weaknesses and personal distractions. The promotion organized a press conference, 2 weeks before the fight. It would be the first time I would see Jackson face to face since discovering the affair. My team was concerned about how I would react, afraid I might jeopardize the fight by assaulting him outside the cage. But when the moment came, I surprised everyone, most of all myself. As Jackson strutted to the stage, smirking and playing to the cameras, I felt an unusual calm descend over me. When we faced off, his eyes were searching mine for signs of the emotional wreckage he expected to find. Instead, he saw only focused determination. "You look worried, Jackson," I said quietly so only he could hear. "You should be." His smirk faltered just for a second, but it was enough. The reporters noticed the unusual tension between us, the way Jackson seemed thrown off by my demeanor. Speculation began about what might be happening behind the scenes, but no one knew the full story yet. That moment at the press conference marked a turning point. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt in control. Jackson had expected to face a broken man. Instead, he was facing someone who had transformed pain into purpose. The psychological advantage he thought he had secured was slipping away, and we both knew it. Fight day arrived with crystal clarity. I woke before my alarm, calm and focused in a way I had rarely experienced before a match. The usual pre-fight jitters were replaced by a strange sense of inevitability, as if the outcome had already been determined, and I was simply going through the necessary steps to reveal it. My morning routine was methodical light-stretching visualization exercises with Dr. Marcus' final weight check and nutritional preparation. Troy kept the atmosphere in our hotel room quiet and controlled limiting visitors and distractions. This was not just another fight. This was a reckoning. We arrived at the venue 3 hours before my scheduled bout. As I walked through the back corridors toward the locker room, I glimpsed Amanda in the VIP section, dressed as if for a night out rather than a sporting event. Our eyes met briefly before I turned away. She had made her choice, and now we would all live with the consequences. The locker room became a sanctuary of focus. As Troy wrapped my hands, a ritual we had performed countless times over the years, he spoke quietly about the game plan. "First round, you feel him out. Defensive conservative, let him think his strategy is working. Second round, start implementing our counters but still hold back your full arsenal. Third round, empty the tank. He will not expect you to have that much left." My team surrounded me with positive energy, each member playing their role in preparing me physically and mentally for what was to come. As the earlier fights on the card progressed, we could hear the crowd growing louder, more energized. Jackson was a local favorite, and the arena would be hostile territory. When it was finally time, Troy gathered everyone for one last moment together. "Remember why you are here," he said, his hands on my shoulders. "Not for revenge, not for her, not even for victory. You are here because this is who you are. This is your cage, your fight, your moment." Walking out to the cage was surreal. The lights seemed brighter, the crowd noise simultaneously deafening and distant. I kept my eyes forward, focused on the octagon ahead, refusing to search the audience for Amanda or acknowledge the boos raining down from Jackson's supporters. Jackson was already in the cage when I entered, bouncing on the balls of his feet, trying to project confidence. Up close, I could see something in his eyes that the cameras would miss: uncertainty. He had expected his psychological advantage to break me before we ever stepped into the cage. Now, faced with my composed demeanor, doubt was creeping in. The referee called us to the center for final instructions. Jackson tried to intimidate me with his stance, standing too close, staring too hard. I met his gaze calmly, seeing not the man who had slept with my wife, but simply another opponent, to be overcome, another obstacle in my path. When the bell rang for round 1, Jackson came out aggressive as expected, throwing heavy combinations and looking for an early finish. I stayed defensive, using movement and clinch work to neutralize his power, just as we had planned. To the crowd, it might have looked like I was being overly cautious or even afraid. To Troy, watching from the corner, it was perfect execution of our strategy. By the end of the first round, Jackson was still confident, having controlled much of the action on the surface. But I had accomplished my goals, minimizing damage, gathering information on his timing, and most importantly, making him comfortable with the rhythm of the fight. He returned to his corner smiling, thinking the fight was going his way. Round 2 began with a subtle shift. I started timing his entries, meeting his aggression with sharp counters that visibly surprised him. A check hook caught him coming and snapping his head back. A well-timed knee found his midsection during a clinch. Nothing fight-ending, but enough to plant seeds of doubt. Midway through the second round, I executed the first phase of our specific strategy, taking him down with a perfectly timed double leg after one of his wide hooks. On the ground, I controlled him with pressure, wearing him down, making him carry my weight. He defended well enough to avoid submissions, but expended precious energy doing so. When the round ended, the shift in momentum was palpable. Jackson returned to his corner, breathing hard, the smirk replaced by concern. I sat calmly on my stool, taking measured sips of water, my eyes never leaving him. Troy's voice in my ear was steady. He is breaking. Time to take what is yours. The third round revealed the full extent of our strategy. Jackson came out desperate, knowing he was behind on the scorecards. His strikes were wider, his breathing labored, his footwork increasingly sloppy. I met his desperation with technical precision, slipping his power shots and landing my own with increasing accuracy. 2 minutes into the final round, the opportunity presented itself. Jackson overcommitted to a right hand, leaving himself off balance. I ducked under and executed a perfect blast double leg, driving him to the canvas with authority. As we hit the ground, I could feel the fight draining out of him. What followed was a masterclass in ground control. I moved from side control to mount, raining down measured strikes, while avoiding his increasingly weak attempts to buck me off. When he turned to his stomach in desperation, I seized the opening, sliding one arm under his chin and locking in a rear naked choke. The tap came quickly. Jackson knew he was beaten physically and psychologically. As the referee pulled me off the arena, erupted in a mixture of cheers and shocked silence. I stood and walked calmly to my corner, embracing Troy and my team without the wild celebration that might have been expected. During the official decision announcement, I maintained my composure. When the interviewer thrust the microphone in my face and asked about the unusual intensity between Jackson and me, I simply said, "Some fights are business. This one was personal." That is all I will say tonight. As was customary, Jackson and I were supposed to shake hands before leaving the cage. When he approached his face, a mixture of physical pain and humiliation, I leaned in close. "She is all yours now," I said quietly. "You both deserve each other." The confusion and shame on his face told me everything I needed to know. His victory had been about more than just winning a fight. It had been about conquering me completely in the cage and out. Instead, he had lost everything: the fight, the psychological game, and whatever twisted satisfaction he had gained from the affair. As I walked back to the locker room, I saw Amanda trying to make her way through security to the fighter area. I caught the eye of the head security officer and shook my head slightly. He understood immediately, blocking her path as I disappeared down the corridor. The aftermath of the fight unfolded quickly. That night, I returned to our apartment with Troy and 2 other teammates to collect the rest of my belongings. Amanda was waiting, as I expected she would be. Her appearance was disheveled, eyes red from crying, alternating between rage and pleading as we efficiently packed my life into boxes and bags. "You humiliated Jackson on purpose," she accused as I gathered my clothes from the closet we once shared. "This was all about revenge. This was about me fighting my fight," I replied calmly. "Everything else was just consequence." She followed me from room to room, her tactics shifting rapidly. One moment she was apologetic, claiming the affair had been a terrible mistake and begging for another chance. The next, she was defensive, blaming my dedication to fighting for creating the distance between us. Then came anger accusations that I had never truly loved her, that I had always put my career first. Through it all, I remained calm, focused on the task at hand. When everything was loaded into vehicles, I turned to her one last time in what had been our home. "I will be filing for divorce tomorrow," I said. "Lauren Diaz will contact your lawyer with the details. Cedric, please." She grabbed my arm, her voice breaking. 6 years of marriage. We can work through this." I gently removed her hand. "The marriage ended the moment you decided to sleep with my opponent. Everything since then has just been paperwork." The next morning, I met with Lauren and officially began divorce proceedings. Given the clear evidence of infidelity and the absence of children, the process would be relatively straightforward from a legal perspective. Emotionally, I knew the road would be more complicated. True to form, Amanda's response to the divorce filing was erratic and escalating. She bombarded me with messages ranging from tearful declarations of love to vicious accusations. When I blocked her number, she began showing up at the gym, creating scenes that became increasingly uncomfortable for everyone. After one particularly disruptive incident, where she had to be escorted from the premises by security, Troy suggested I take a few weeks away to train at an affiliated gym in Colorado. The change of scenery proved therapeutic, allowing me to focus on healing both physically from the fight and emotionally from the betrayal. During those weeks in the mountains, running at altitude and training with new partners, I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been lost in the chaos. I reconnected with my love for the sport itself, separated from the business aspects and personal drama that had recently defined it. I worked with a local therapist, recommended by Dr.com, Marcus, processing the anger and grief in healthy ways. When I returned home, I moved into a new apartment, smaller but entirely mine. I decorated it minimally, finding unexpected peace in the simplicity. The gym community rallied around me, as rumors of the real story had begun to circulate. Far from facing judgment or pity, I found respect and support from fellow fighters who understood the mental strength required to perform under such circumstances. 3 weeks after my return, Amanda made her final attempt at reconciliation. I was finishing an evening training session when she appeared at the gym, somehow having talked her way past the front desk. She looked terrible, thin and pale, wearing an expensive dress that seemed out of place in the gritty gym environment. "Cedric," she said, her voice small in the cavernous training room. "Please talk to me." I gestured to one of the chairs against the wall, away from where other fighters were still training. "5 minutes," I said. "Then you need to leave." What followed was perhaps the most pathetic display I had ever witnessed. Amanda literally got down on her knees, mascara running down her face, begging for another chance. She claimed to have ended things with Jackson, to have realized what she had thrown away, to be unable to live without me. "I made the biggest mistake of my life," she sobbed. "I will do anything to make it right." Looking at her kneeling on the dirty gym floor, I felt nothing but a profound sadness and surprisingly gratitude. Sadness for the love that had been real once before it was poisoned by betrayal. Gratitude, because her actions, painful as they were, had forced me to find a strength in myself I might never have discovered otherwise. "Amanda," I said, gently helping her to her feet. "It is over. Not just our marriage, but this whole situation. I have moved on, and you need to as well." "Is there someone else?" she asked, desperation making her grasp at any explanation besides the truth. "No," I replied. "There is just me figuring out who I am without you, and finding I am doing better than I expected." I walked her to the door, ignoring the stares from others in the gym. At the entrance, she turned for one last appeal. "Will you ever forgive me?" The question gave me pause. Forgiveness had not been part of my vocabulary these past months. But standing there, I realized something important about the journey I had been on. "I already have," I said truthfully. "Not for your sake, but for mine." Carrying that anger was exhausting. I let it go in that cage with Jackson. 2 days after that final encounter, my phone rang with news that changed everything. My dominant victory over Jackson, coupled with an injury to the division's #1 contender, had created an unexpected opportunity. The promotion was offering me a title shot 3 months out against the current champion. As I hung up the phone, I sat in my new apartment, taking in the significance of the moment. 6 months ago, I had a wife I thought loved me, a career on a slow but steady trajectory, and a life that seemed settled if not quite fulfilled. Now I was single, living in a sparse apartment, but somehow more alive, more focused, more authentically myself than I had been in years. The betrayal that could have destroyed me had instead become the catalyst for the greatest opportunity of my career. By forcing me to rebuild myself from the ground up, it had stripped away everything but the essential core of who I was as a fighter and as a man. There is a freedom that comes from having your worst fears realized and surviving them. When you have already lost what you thought you could not live, without you discover what you are truly capable of. For me, that discovery came in the cage with Jackson. But the real victory was in the quiet moments afterward, rebuilding a life that was truly my own. Have you ever had a moment where betrayal became your breakthrough? where losing something you thought was essential actually set you free. Drop your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear that their worst moment could become their greatest opportunity. Thanks for being part of this story. And remember, sometimes life gives you the fight you need, not the one you want.